Good morning, trading world. It is December 1st, 2021, just after 8 a.m. And this is my pre-market outlook. All right. The title of today's pre-market outlook is that it's the first of the month. It's the first of the month, so you know what that means. New money. And what I mean by new money is that there's new fund inflows from retirement and automated savings plans that fund managers get access to and have to put to work today. So usually there's an inordinate amount of buying on the first, usually first through third. But I've been watching this kind of dwindle a little bit. And I'm thinking that there's a correlation with the JOLTS number, with there are less and less people that are actually working or have quit. So there's a little less money going into those plans. Where this used to be a 3-day event, I'm seeing it kind of trickle down into a 2-day event. And possibly because of the strength of some of the selling that we have, it could possibly be a 1-day event. You just never know. But this usually, with addition to it being an expiration day, it usually makes for a very strong rally. So, going back to the 1, 2, 3 criteria, we are still looking for that test and failure of the upper level or the preceding high. And that preceding high is 473 and change, or 473.54. However, I have a shaded area up here because we noticed that there was a wall being built between this 468 and 470 area where it's going to be very hard to get through. So we're still looking for that test of whether we fail, and then once we break through the lower level, we'll definitely have our trend change on the longer term time frame, the daily, the 1-year daily time frame. We'll have a trend change there. Or the other thing that we're looking for that could happen would be a breakout above that 473 area. And that would be the continuation of the uptrend. So let's get to the key levels of support for today. Key levels of support for today are going to be the 460 area, 459, and 458. Key levels of resistance are going to be 464, 465, and 469. So those are places where we look for potential reactions, where you look for divergence and convergence with your indicators or internals. Now let's do our day mapping scenarios. All right, the first scenario that I will be planning for has a 42% probability of happening, and that is our trend up day structure. as you can tell, the overnight or the European session did a very large move. So we are gap up by a large amount. So one of my concerns has been that the market makers have kind of played this. It's kind of unfair to retail, because when situations or conditions get such as they are, the market makers will come in and do a lot in the overnight session. They'll use the algos or whatever, what have you, and they will do most of the move in the overnight session or pre-market, where usually us as retail can't take advantage of it. And the disadvantage of that is that usually we'll come in as retail and buy on top of that, where the fund managers are selling into that. So we don't get the move that it should have been, because we don't have both retail and the professional fund managers on the same road. So that's going to be something that I have in the back of my mind that I'll be keeping an eye on. But the way this trend day should normally work is that we get this gap up, we get a fade back towards support, which is usually yesterday's close. We had yesterday's close at 455.56. We should find support somewhere between where we are pre-market and that area. Because of how things have worked, and there's been such a need or such a want for a rally, I'm going to say that we find support possibly around that 460 area, and then we reverse to the uptrend, taking us to the key levels of resistance. And usually midday between 12, starting somewhere sometimes around 11:30, but usually between 12 and 1, we get this midday chop where we settle in the area and just kind of go back and forth. We open up the second half of the day on a trend day, usually with a head fake, where we'll kind of seem like we're starting to go back down, and then usually we'll resume the morning trend, or the main trend of the morning. So that is what the biggest probability of the day, and what I will be looking for here. I'm going to get long in various ways. I'm going to do some call verticals here, because usually when the VIX is so high, when volatility is so high, and we could have a possibility of volatility coming down. And when you buy straight calls, if they're not, 50 delta or better, and usually when we have a volatility as high as it is, sometimes the 50 delta isn't sufficient enough. But what could happen as you buy, if you just buy straight calls, as we begin to move up, volatility could come down. And when volatility comes down, it could suck a lot of premium out of the straight calls. And so instead of getting a decent profit from buying straight calls, you realize that half of the premium or half of the money that's involved in the calls is being sucked away with the volatility, leaving you with a lot less profit than you initially thought. So I'm going to use some call verticals as well as straight calls. Once I see indicators and internals kind of level off, I'll begin buying here, somewhere in this area. And usually on the straight calls, I will be out when we start into this lunchtime chop, and that should be sufficient for me to be done for the day. I'm going to do a number of call verticals because I will attempt to hold maybe one or two overnight to see if this extends into tomorrow, because like I said, this used to be a 3-day event and now it's kind of shortened into a 2-day phenomenon. So just curious to see if it still holds up. But don't be fooled. We are setting up for a major failure. So that's scenario number 2. Scenario number 2 is what I like to call a change day or rounded reversal. And you'll notice one of the key factors in noticing this day take place is that right off the open, we're going to start this uptrend. There'll be no looking back. We'll take off like a rocket toward the upside, initiating that uptrend. But you'll notice how volume diverges from price action. As price action is heading up, you'll see volume kind of heading down, and your indicator will also not quite participate. And then so when we get here to the midday chop, it's just so happens that price action will catch up to what indicators and internals have been doing most of the morning. As they have been diverging downward, price action coming into the second half of the day after midday chop, they will revert, and we'll have, just as an explosive move as we had coming up, we'll have almost that same move going down the second half of the day. This has a 33% probability of happening. This is the rounded reversal. Again, divergence and convergence will be key. You should see that almost right at the opening, divergence between volume and indicators. The last scenario is going to be the range day. There are a lot of different variations that this can happen, but the key principle in a range day is we usually establish a range high and a range low, and we chop usually between those two areas, but there are different variations where we can push the boundaries of that range high or that range low. We would probably push the boundaries of the range high today. So the range day structure has the least probability of happening today, but we like to be prepared anyway. So those are the scenarios that could take place for today. Things to kind of remember: this new fund inflows, this phenomenon usually lasts 2 to 3 days, but it's a new world with all the selling pressure and all the negative negative flow. Who knows whether we get just one day and we get back up and test this area here and fail. But we just have to kind of wait and trade what we see. So as always, know your risk. It is very dangerous to hold longs overnight. So if you're doing so, please have a defined risk position where you know exactly what it is that you could lose and you're comfortable with that. That's pretty much it for today. Wishing you a successful day of trading. Have a great day.